Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? If the answer is yes, then you're ready.
No one plays a bigger victim than an oppressor who is suddenly given a tiny taste of what it's like to not have all the power. When them folks feel like they losing power to control the curriculum, they will create laws to keep that power. When us folks had all the power to push people inside the closets, everything was all good. But now that we feel like we're losing some of that power, man, we feel like we're being oppressed. This is an agenda being pushed on us. You see what I just did right there? That was an intersectional analysis about how power always feel like it's being oppressed when it's giving some up. Recognize how they both have the same hubris of thinking. Yeah, both oppositional ideologies come from the same line of thinking. People that talk about the woke agenda and the gay agenda see equality like pie. And if somebody else is getting more equality, that means you getting less. Now, my grandmother always said, tell the truth and shame the devil. So if I'm lying, tell me how I'm wrong. But if I'm telling the truth, then leave me alone. Education is elevation.
If you're a woman and you agree with any of the things that I'm about to show you, please watch the full video.
I've seen people talk about how we can't say feminine products anymore. We shouldn't say feminine products anymore. It's not a pregnant mom. It's a birthing person. It's not breastfeeding. It's chest feeding. Oh, we're trying to be inclusive to all these other people. I feel like womanhood is being washed away.
Let me start by saying, hi, my name is Zaya. I'm a 20-year-old transgender woman, and recently I've been seeing a lot of discourse between trans and cis women, and I just want to add my 2 cents. So please hear me out. Transgender women are not a threat to womanhood, like whatsoever. Let me explain. The reason you've been seeing an increase of trans-inclusive language is because currently, right now, trans people's lives are at risk. Like, did you know there have already been over 200 anti-trans bills introduced in the US this year? And Donald Trump said that if he wins the presidency in 2024, he will make it a key point to ban anyone from transitioning at any age. And unfortunately, this means if we don't do or say anything, we are looking at trans genocide in the future of the United States. The reason you've been seeing more trans-inclusive language in the media is to remind people that trans people exist, and we have always existed, and we're not going anywhere. When it comes to inclusive language like birthing person or chest feeding, nobody is forcing you to use those terms. In fact, most people don't use those terms at all. Terms such as birthing person and chest feeding, those are there for people like trans men or non-binary people who just want to feel included. If you're a pregnant woman and you want to be called a mother or you want to call it breastfeeding, go ahead. Nobody is stopping you, like as you should. Most people use those terms anyways, still. It's just that some people do not, and that's okay to acknowledge. The people that you see saying that you have to use inclusive language or you can't use the word mother are usually chronically online or just trolls. Like, most people do not think that way. The internet is just making y'all feel like this is more of an issue than it actually is. Also, most trans women fully realize that the trans experience is way different than the experience of someone who was born female. I realize that I will never understand what it's like to grow up as a woman. I will never understand what it's like to menstruate or to be pregnant. But at the same time, cis women will never know what it's like to be trans, to experience gender dysphoria. Personally, my dysphoria was so bad that I did full hormone replacement therapy and I got sex reassignment surgery. And I didn't do any of that to replace anyone or to mock anyone. I did that because I'm a woman and I just wanted to be comfortable in my body, and I finally am. I can guarantee you 99.9% of trans people just want to live our lives peacefully. There should not be this war between cis and trans. Really, instead of fighting against each other, we should be fighting with each other. With all the anti-trans bills, the reversal of Roe versus Wade, it's clear the government wants full control of women. Trans or cis, it doesn't matter. We just need to put our differences aside and realize we're not each other's enemy. The patriarchy is the enemy.
I find the term cisgender to be disrespectful to who I actually am.
This is what every transphobe who hates being called cisgender sounds like. Hi guys, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and say that I don't like the term being referred to as a natural blonde. Like, I'm not a natural blonde, I'm not a true blonde, I was just born this way, I'm just a real blonde. And I don't hate people who have dyed their hair blonde, like I'm not dye-phobic. I'm not gonna call you blonde because you had to dye your hair that way, like it's not natural. Like, you can dye your hair all you want, it doesn't make you blonde. And leave the kids out of it, I mean, they don't know what color hair they want. Like, I read online that like tens of people a year get chemical burns on their hair from their hair dye. It's disgusting. Like, I'm not trying to be offensive. There's just a difference between having dyed blonde hair and having natural blonde hair. That's not diphobic or hateful to even say that. I mean, it's biology. I was just born with this beautiful blonde hair. And I see all these people with dyed blonde hair and now they're acting out like a blonde stereotype. Like, we're not all dumb, you know? And not every blonde has more fun. Like, that's a stupid stereotype. You're not a real blonde.
I got a few bodies up under my belt. Oh, bitch, I'm a big gangster.
Guys who slut shame fucking just irk the ever-living fuck out of me. Like, do you realize how stupid it is? So you're mad because you're not getting laid, right? So that's why you're hating on women, because they're sluts and whores, because they want to have sex and enjoy sex just like you do, just like every guy does, right? But by you shaming them and having other guys shame them, they get to a point where they're like, fuck that, I'm just not going to have sex. So you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. It's the dumbest fucking mentality I've ever seen in my life. You slut shame, which makes them not want to have sex, and then you bitch about not getting fucked. You're a dumbass. The funny part is, they're still gonna go out and get laid. They just don't wanna get laid by someone with a fucking hateful ass, judgmental attitude like yours.
Science is not objective. I really hate to break it to you, hate to burst your bubble, but science is a creative art and it reflects the background, the beliefs of the creator of that art. And as a woman of color, the conclusions that I come to looking at the same exact data as a white scientist are going to be different. And I would often be called out for my takeaways and my ideas saying that I'm being subjective. And the reality of the fact is we are all being subjective, but white men get to ignore the fact that they're being subjective because they are the normal, the baseline, and their subjectivity is normalized, right? And one example is there was an article in a fisheries journal written by a white man who was trying to recruit people of color, and he worked at an HBCU, and he also worked in Alaska with an indigenous community, and he couldn't get anyone to join his lab, and he said that other white women couldn't do it, other younger white men couldn't do it, so it wasn't his age and it wasn't his gender, and he decided that the reason that these people of color didn't want to be involved in environmental science and the fisheries was because they didn't care about the environment. Whereas my takeaway from looking at the same exact data would be they probably didn't feel culturally safe in your lab. Culture is a huge thing. I wrote a paper on that. It's the main reason that students of color leave their PhD programs, especially in their first year, is because of cultural differences, not because of academic challenges. And so culture is one of the main reasons. Another reason is that in environmental sciences, there's often an expectation of free labor or of unpaid labor and volunteer hours, which people who come from low income backgrounds don't have the freedom to participate in the same ways. And without this understanding, this man wrote in an article that in a journal that he was editor of that people of color didn't care about the environment. And this is kind of an exaggerated example, but we see examples of this everywhere in all research and science. And it's hard because I am constantly looking out for whether or not I'm being objective because I understand my biases, whereas most white scientists aren't as familiar with their own biases, and therefore they're totally ignorant, totally unaware of any biases they may be reinforcing through their work. And that's where it gets really dangerous. And I just I don't want to be like anti-science. I'm not anti-science. It's just we have to take everything with a grain of salt, with the understanding that if you come to a different conclusion based on the data, then like you might not be wrong. And also, I love bullying old white men and scientists, so I just thought this would be fun, and it has been.
This is a tough one. I mean, how do you support that student who isn't ready to come out yet? But really, it just means you need to double down on the supportive stuff that hopefully you're doing anyway, and I'll run through a list for you. First of all, degendering your own language, no more boys and girls, no more ladies and gentlemen, and making sure you're not grouping the students by gender in your class. Making sure that you're calling out instances of homophobia, transphobia, sexism, etc. that happen in your class when they happen. And honestly, that's its own video in and of itself. Make sure you're bringing in representation of LGBTQ people into your own curriculum in an age-appropriate way to normalize it for all students in the class, not just the ones who haven't come out yet. And at a higher level, make sure that the non-discrimination and non-bullying policies where you work are inclusive. Beyond that, just be supportive. Encourage that student to join a GSA or a youth group and let them know that you're there for them, whatever they need.
Rant warning.
Okay, so I'm picking something up for somebody and I'm just going to need a minute to rant here. This guy comes out of the shop and as I'm pulling into the parking spot, starts going like this to me. Like I've never parked my own truck before. Like I couldn't possibly make this happen here today without him being there to guide me into this parking spot. Now, what is it about men that thinks that just because I have boobs, I can't do things by myself? Like, thank God there's a man there to help me park my truck because I've never parked a truck before in my life. Like, seriously? And this happens to me all the time. Oh, you know, this is how you close the gate. Really? Because it's the first time I've ever used a cattle gate on my own property? Really? What would us women do without men there to constantly show us how to do things that we're already doing?
I can mention Dostoevsky in here and say that name because I think it makes me sound smart. Have I read Crime and Punishment? Fuck no, it's boring. Have I read Animorphs? Yes.
I love you, Phobia.
Oh, kill yourself. Oh, kill yourself. Oh, kill yourself. Oh, kill yourself. Go bitch, kill yourself.
Do y'all ever just see someone, like a woman, and just be like, God damn, like, damn, I'm gay, like,
I dare you to use this love affirmation for 21 days and watch what happens in your love life. The partner I seek is also seeking me, and I now release any blocks that are standing between us.